Howdy, it's Kbex and welcome back to my writing channel. This week I'm going to talk about how to create different character voices. So a week or two ago I was with my writing group and this question was posed about how to have different narrative voices and how do we stop getting ourselves stuck with each of our characters and then the narrative all sounding the same. And so these are just some of the things that myself and the group kind of threw together to try and solve this problem. So without any further delay, let's get into number one. So firstly, I want to talk about the particular language that they use. Do they have a certain pattern or structure? It's very easy to fall into the trap of having all your characters use very similar language styles, sentence lengths even, or patterns, or occasionally catchphrases. I would minimise using catchphrases anyway. So you should try to have particular styles that are for each of the characters, and it will take a little bit of a while to get used to that. So for example, if you have a character that's quite anxious, then you're probably going to want to use a lot more filler. Not too much, because that can be really distracting for a reader, but you will want to try and keep it consistent and make sure the other characters aren't using quite the same amount of, say, like that and ellipses and that kind of thing. You're also going to want to consider whether they have a particular preference for a certain word. It can be a curse word depending on what sort of age you are aiming at. You're also going to want to be careful of making each character far too quippy, because as you probably are aware from films you might have watched, the more characters you have delivering quips back and forth, the more they blend in with each other. And so it's fine to have a quippy character, and it's fine to have really fun moments with banter back and forth between the characters, but you're going to want to still make their voices distinct whilst they're having that back and forth banter. So you may wish to have your characters be distinguishable by their accent or dialect, and it's brilliant if you can do that really well, but particularly if you're a brand new writer, I've found that it's quite tricky to to write effective dialect and accent in your book, obviously, during dialogue. And so you might want to be very selective about which characters, or indeed if any characters, have a strong accent or dialect, because it might get in the way of the narrative or in the way of the conversations that they're having. On to number two. So a lot of people struggle with writing for different voices of characters because they feel like they're writing in their own voice for absolutely everybody, and that isn't going to help build a sense of who these characters are. And so my advice would be to perhaps think of people you have met. Now, of course, you don't want anybody either identifying with the characters and feeling like you've written them into a story unless they've given their permission. But you might want to use inspiration. And so if you have a character that you've already planned out and you think, actually, I think I know somebody, or I've met somebody on one occasion that is a bit like this character, you might want to think, okay, would they say this, or how would they deliver this line? Is it the same way that I would deliver the line, or is it the same way I would feel or react to this conversation that's going on? And so it's a good place to start. Number three, one way of trying to keep those voices distinct from each other is by doing effective planning before you even put pen to paper or type. And so a fact file or like a mind map of ideas is a great way to start. Think in this fact file about not just the big stuff, but even some of the small stuff. How do your characters feel about particular topics? Are they super political? Are they somebody who is very pro-environmental? Are they somebody who's indifferent? Because all of that's going to feed into the way that they speak and the way that they deliver lines. Number four, this one was a recommendation from somebody in my writers group who said that they spend a lot of time people watching, and they say they do this on the go when they're on the bus or the train, and they'll have their phone, they'll flick it open and make little notes on the way people speak or little phrases they might have said, and they'll notice if there's any patterns in their speech and mannerisms and that sort of thing. And that really helps them to come up with things that feel organic and things that might be something they've never even thought of themselves. Number 5. Now this one's going to feed into some of the things I was saying earlier about planning, thinking about the background of the characters. What age are they, their gender, their ethnicity, even where they live. All those things can feed into how they feel about things and how they behave, and obviously how they speak, and it will make them very unique to the other characters who they're with. I think that if you aren't bearing those things in mind, then everything is going to sound just like you, because you'll be using, your own experiences, your point of view from your gender, age, ethnicity, education, and so on. So it's a great idea in the planning stage. Think about having characters that come from a variety of different backgrounds and ages, because they're going to have a unique style when they speak to each other, and so it's going to make them feel very distinct. Number 6. This one, I suppose, is less about a distinct voice and more about their movements and behaviour rather than the way they speak. And that's because of often what they don't say is more important than what they do say. And that means that what's going to be important is how effective your use of verbs are in your dialogue tags. Because if they're not saying something, you need to make it clear that they're not saying something, and maybe give an indication of how they feel about the topic at hand through the way that they're moving, through the things that they are avoiding saying. Number 7. My recommendation is that if you think you fell into the trap of all of your characters and your narrative voice sounding the same as each other, is to pick a section, one where you have a variety of your characters, preferably speaking to each other. Record yourself reading through it. Because what you should find when you do that is you can hear your characters and how different or similar they are. And I think it's a great way of figuring out, have I got a character that sounds very different from the other characters, or are they all beginning to blend in with each other? And finally, number 8. Now, again, this ties into a few that I've already said, but you need to think about the reactions people have. Now, obviously, we've talked already about them not voicing a thought or an opinion, but if they do, how do they do it? Are they particularly defensive? Are they somebody that is kind of anxious about confrontation, and so they're trying to keep harmony amongst the people in the group? Are they somebody who enjoys conflict and kind of riles the others up? So have a think about how they feel about the topic at hand, but also their overriding personality traits. Are they somebody who's confrontational? Are they somebody who just wants everybody to get along? Because if that will inform your decisions about how they approach a conversation in the first place. So that's it. That's my tips on what you can do to try and have distinct voices with your characters. Of course, all of these are subjective, so some might work for you and some might not. Just have a play around and figure out what works best for you, really. That's it. That's my list of different ways to create distinct narrative voices. So bye for now, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to leave a comment down below with your own ideas.